Waking up next to a girl the protagonist barely knows, he explains how it will be the last time that he will meet her, as she could destroy his life, making him lose himself and his ambitions. But the enticing nature of this girl makes it very difficult for the protagonist to resist her, which could have irreversible consequences. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and welcome to I Woke Up Next to You Again. If you have any video or game suggestions, make sure to send them to me on my Twitter or subreddit. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that in mind, let's begin. The protagonist of the game explains how he moves to a new place, presumably a new city, away from family and friends, maybe for a new job or for starting a new life as an independent individual. The protagonist soon unveils that in the short period he spent in the new place, he managed to find someone charming and enticing, someone he takes into his personal life, in his home, despite barely knowing them. Waking up next to this individual, which can be whether a female or a male, but for the purposes of this video, a female, the protagonist explains he woke up next to her again, explaining how it's the second time they did this, even though for some reason not wanting to make this a commitment. The girl iterates how she has other commitments and doesn't want this to be more than just a two-night stand, even though it has been great. The protagonist in response agrees with the girl, explaining how he's on the same boat, someone who just moved into the city, wanting to start a new life, with nothing good coming out of any relationship, as he would have to settle in first, focus on himself, build his new life, and maybe then focus on a relationship. As the girl suddenly gets a phone call with it being a cue for her to leave, it seems as if both the protagonist and the girl want something more from this interaction. But of course, they know better. They must focus on building their lives, securing their jobs, having enough savings before jumping into a relationship. Both individuals agreeing not to see each other again, they mysteriously keep bumping into each other again and again, even though they don't intend to. The protagonist dismisses this as being always in the right place at the right time, with the girl calling it simply a coincidence. But despite that, she keeps on being enticing and sending insinuations that it's nice to see the protagonist again, implying indirectly that it would be good if they had more encounters and a closer relationship, even though knowing it wouldn't be good for the both of them. The protagonist faced with these interactions would have the choice to meet up with the girl or simply refuse and move on with his life. But nevertheless, she keeps on appearing in the most unlikely places, tempting the protagonist to fall in a habit of seeing her again and again. The protagonist describing her as a charming and irresistible individual can't help but invite the girl for coffee or straight to his place, doing this temporary thing over and over again. Even though at first it was the most exhilarating thing the protagonist experienced, he starts to realize and admit how meeting her more and more has led to him becoming exhausted and tired, with it not being fun anymore, but something out of habit, something he cannot shake off. Having the new job to get accustomed to, alongside paying bills, commuting, taking care of himself mentally and physically, all while keeping a healthy relationship with friends and family. Meeting a new girl with complications would make the protagonist's life more difficult, preventing him from finding a balance to deal with life and building a routine to manage everything. After another night together, the girl admits she wants to be in a relationship and see the protagonist more, asking how he feels about it. Despite the voice of wisdom and logic in his head, trying to put a stop to this, the protagonist goes along with whatever the girl asks, finding her to be too enticing to refuse. After exchanging each other's numbers, the protagonist explains how he's available only between 10 AM to 9 PM, having the time outside of those hours dedicated to sleep, personal routine, and preparation for work. The girl, of course, slyly implies how she wants more, breaching into the protagonist's necessary personal time to keep a health routine. After some time spending life with her, the protagonist admits how despite the relationship taking a toll on him, being completely negative, not finding the energy anymore to do anything or have a stable life, he still cannot let go of her, as if becoming addicted. Something that is clearly negative, having a bad impact on his life, yet something he can't shake off. As time goes on, repeating themselves with the girl waking up next to him every morning, the protagonist's world starts glitching and distorting, with nothing being clear anymore. The man explains without her, even a second without her, would make him feel aimless and restless. He explains despite her playing an important part of his life, feeling like a necessity despite being so negative, he starts forgetting about his own existence, his goals and ambitions, what he wanted in life before her, with everything reminding him of her, with his entire life shaping around her, with nothing else mattering anymore. Feeling like a shell of himself, completely empty and aimless, the protagonist wakes up one day, describing the new physical impacts of this relationship with the girl. Waking up alone this time, his head starts pounding and feels sluggish, which makes him, without a second thought, pick up his phone and call the girl, begging her to come over, knowing she will make it better, that all the problems he feels are the side effects of the girl not being present. Not seeing clearly that all these problems are the result of the girl, with her presence only temporarily keeping the pain at bay. He doesn't admit that he is in need of her, saying that he only wants her there at his side, not seeing the full image that he's addicted to her, a dependency that doesn't let him be on his own feet and have a stable life. The protagonist's life starting to distort, being the same day every day, being dependent on the girl just for her presence to satiate the pain and just be enough to let the protagonist cope. Years pass on, with the protagonist's mind taking a big blow, feeling amnesiac, not keeping in touch with his family and friends anymore, but even if he wanted to be, he couldn't, as he starts to forget them, forget their faces and who they are, their personalities and their relationship to the protagonist, with all he's seeing and caring about being the slow-burned relationship he has with this mysterious girl, someone he doesn't fully know or understand despite all the years spent together. Not knowing anything about himself or his surroundings anymore, caring even less about his future, the protagonist's family tries to talk to him and put some sense into him, but no matter what, the protagonist cannot listen and absorb anything anymore, being lost and absent without this mysterious girl. Life only carries on, without the protagonist even realizing the passage of time, just continuing to live as a shadow. The story is of course ambiguous and more like a representation of an unhealthy relationship to something that hinders the progress of an individual, making them become empty, slowly fading away and losing the sense of themselves. Deciphering the story, we learn the protagonist starts a new life, simply saying that he has moved to a new place with skyscrapers forming the background. He also explains how he needs to tend to his daily routine of taking care of himself between 9 AM to 10 PM, which slowly falls apart after he meets this mysterious girl. This potentially suggests that the protagonist is a young adult who seemingly finds a new but stressful job in the city, working from 10 AM to 9 PM, which could consist of time spent traveling to work and eating as well. The protagonist seems to be a healthy man who has ambitions and goals, intending to create a comfortable, stable life, which of course requires hard work at first, making one feel very stressed, at times not managing to even spend a second for entertainment. As all the stress builds up, the protagonist finds an individual that tends to his stress, comforting him, yet clearly being just a distraction, as the protagonist fully knows and understands this should only be temporary as it hinders his plans for a better future. As the more time he spends with her, the less time he has working to earn money and to work on himself. Despite firmly confirming it as a one-time thing, never to be repeated again, he finds himself meeting up with the girl again and again, finding her to be irresistible, even though suffering as the result, to the point of becoming a shadow of himself, not recognizing himself anymore, or as a matter of fact, anyone else, just seeing the girl with his world revolving around her. According to what has been said, it seems as if the girl is the representation of recreational drugs or opioids, something the protagonist tried in the midst of struggling with life as a source of relief and wanted to leave to carry on with his life, knowing full well that it's destructive for him, yet he finds it difficult to let go. At first, he says how fun it is, yet not wanting to build a habit, but he keeps bumping into her, which is a representation of everyday temptation on how the substance keeps on coming back to entice him to keep on repeating. The girl is seen as a pleasurable and charming individual, which the protagonist finds difficult to avoid, especially in his new hectic and stressful life, which slowly turns into an inevitable nightmare, becoming an addiction which makes the protagonist suffer physically and mentally in the absence of. This is a clear indication of the protagonist's addiction to opioids, which causes him to have withdrawal symptoms when he doesn't use, with his world distorting and his memory failing him, with all he wants being to be next to the girl, forgetting all of his ambitions and goals, yet refusing to accept he needs the girl and is addicted. As in the phone call, he begs for the girl to be there, insisting that he doesn't need her, which is a stage of addiction where the victims do not admit that they are addicted, not seeing the full image. Throughout the story, the protagonist has the ability to reject the offers of the girl, but he keeps falling for them, which in a way suggests how he had the ability of putting a stop to a future addiction, yet he failed to. Therefore, when the girl kept saying bumping into each other all the time was just a coincidence, it was far from the truth, as the girl is a recreational substance being found outside in parties, bad neighborhoods, or even good neighborhoods, especially when one looks for it. Therefore, this is a sad story of how someone starts losing their life by just experimenting something bad, slowly building a dependency yet refusing to admit it, which slowly takes over their life and consumes them, preventing them from ever becoming the person that they wanted to become. It becomes so bad to the point that the protagonist forgets himself and his family, fading away like he never existed, living in an alternate dark and horrifying reality. Alternatively, when the protagonist keeps on meeting her accidentally, being the temptations of repeating his actions, he acts bluntly and keeps avoiding her, mentioning how he should stop anything from developing before it's too late, meaning before it becomes an addiction and a habit which would destroy his life. Not much is mentioned after this point, but it seems the protagonist keeps bumping into her, but keeps avoiding her, which indicates how the temptation is always there after he tried it for a couple of times and got a taste of it. But his strong will and dedication for a better life which saves him, stopping him from ever approaching the substance again. Unfortunately, it'll always be there to hunt and taunt him, with time only showing whether he would be able to fully resist it or not. In another alternate ending, when bumping into the mysterious girl again, the protagonist fails to resist the urge and invites her home again. While there, the girl asks the protagonist she wants more and that she wants a commitment, but the protagonist refuses, which makes the girl become more persistent, telling him how it takes the stress out and relaxes him and how it is good in his life. But the protagonist argues that it's becoming too much and too frequent to the point that he's feeling dependent. As the girl suggests to have another round, the protagonist refuses again but starts feeling dizzy with his world glitching and distorting, feeling a strong pull which terrifies him. The girl still being persistent, the protagonist fights her off with all his will, being too scared to find out what happens if she sticks around. That's when all of a sudden she leaves, with the protagonist never bumping into her ever again, or at least that's what he thinks. As days pass, the protagonist starts feeling strange, as if a part of his life is missing, which slowly fades away, going back to normal, which of course are the withdrawal symptoms he feels after developing some sort of dependency. Regardless, he feels happy that he fought it off, surviving a possible addiction that would ruin his life. As he becomes scared that he might give in to the temptations of the enticing girl, a good friend of his moves in to his new place, which brightens up his life, represented in colors forming. The friend catches up with the protagonist and asks how he's been when he mentions the girl that he's been meeting. As the friend asks for a picture, he shows a picture just of himself standing alone, which worries the friend, saying how there's no one there except for him. Being concerned, the friend asks if the protagonist is alright, when he thinks for a bit and decides to share his pain, trusting his friend, saying how he hasn't been himself. Not explained in the dialogue, it seems as if the protagonist mentions his drug problem, with the friend staying by his side, promising to help him and being there when he needs her. Despite that, he keeps finding himself on his bed, having withdrawal symptoms and compulsions, but he keeps fighting and having a good friend on his side, having a fighting chance that one day he will fully overcome this and live a normal life. This of course reveals, after several times of using, the protagonist forms a dependency which still comes back to haunt him, still having withdrawal symptoms and thinking about the girl, but admitting his problem and telling his friend, which gives him a fighting chance to survive and shake off this destructive desire. In a more dark and twisted alternate ending, if the protagonist refuses to discuss his problem with his friend believes him that he's just okay, which makes the protagonist regret not opening up, being in this all alone, having the cravings and urges of going to old habits, with his vision getting distorted, with the colors starting to fade, an indication that he could fail, especially without support and help from his friends and family. This is a beautiful yet terrifying representation of addiction, whether it being substance or anything else that could lead lead to addiction, on how everyday struggle and stress could tempt someone into experimenting to take the edge off, slowly becoming a habit if not cut at the root, leading to destruction of one's life. Even when experimented with a few times only, it could come back to haunt one, with strong circle of support needed to fight off the urge. This problem is depicted beautifully in the image of a charming and tempting girl or a boy who could reach into someone's intimate life and fully control them to the point that they don't exist anymore. And that's about it for this video, folks. I truly hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.